it's not. Okay. Hi, good evening, and we are here live once again for night 4, the final night of the panel discussion on the SSLR project, strengthening sustainable livelihoods and resilience in the Kalinago territory. And this evening, we are focusing on the Kalinago women, and it is a great pleasure to see that so many of them are here. And on the panel, we have with us Willa Cyrille, Anette Sandford, Gweneth Frederick, Natasha Green, and Miranda Langlais, who are all part of the panelists and will be speaking and giving their testimonies as women in the Kalinago space. And we are really pressed and tight for time this evening, as this is the final night. So we will go right across to the head table for where the Honorable Cozier Frederick, who is responsible in the Ministry of Environment and Kalinago Upliftment, and with him also is his co-host, Mr. Gregory Rabes. So without further ado, as we begin tonight's proceedings, you are live on DBS Radio via 88.1 FM and our social media, YouTube and Facebook pages. So we take you now to the head table as we begin tonight's proceedings with the Honorable Cozier Frederick.
Okay. Mabrika. Good evening to all everyone gathered here at the Kalinago Barana Ute. Good evening as well to those of you listening via DBS Radio and those of you viewing the proceedings live via Imo News. Of course, tonight is the final webinar in the series on Kalinago. And tonight we feature the women. As you know, this is the last 4 webinars, and we had webinars featuring the academics and historians and the youth that happened last week. And last evening we featured the cultural elders and the Kalinago cultural activists, former chiefs and all of that. So tonight the focus is on the women and the women's perspective. Let me just give you a bit of an overview of the wider project which underpins this series of webinars, and then I will give you a short bio on the beautiful women here on the panel. The project is called Strengthening Sustainable Livelihoods and Resilience in the Kalinago Territory, SSLR for short. The SSLR project is focused primarily on the Kalinago community, which is home to the largest indigenous grouping in the Eastern Caribbean. The project is funded by the Government of India through the India-UN Development Partnership and implemented by the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, in close collaboration with various partners, which include the Kalinago Council, the Government of the Commonwealth of Dominica through the Ministry of Environment, Rural Modernization and Kalinago Upliftment, the Ministry of Blue and Green Economy, Agriculture and National Food Security, the Ministry of Tourism, International Transport and Maritime Initiatives. The overall objective of the SSLR project is to provide assistance to the Kalinago community to access equitable social protection systems, quality services, foods, and augment critical water catchment areas. 3. Tourism. Develop a comprehensive Kalinago tourism strategy and brand that generates new income opportunities for the territory. And 4. Institutional strengthening. Boost institutional capacities of the Kalinago Council for improved participative and inclusive decision-making and planning. So there are several activities planned under each of these outputs. But of course, in the interest of time, we will focus on one activity which falls on the output 4, which has gathered us here this evening. The SSLR project team, along with the Ministry of Kalinago Upliftment, has noted the importance of creating a wider debate to raise public awareness of the Kalinago heritage's impact on Dominica and the island's future as the first climate resilient country in the world. And as I indicated earlier, this is the last in a series of 4 webinars. And these webinars are designed to basically inform the production of 2 booklets on the Kalinago territory, which again fall under Output 4. One is a coloring book for children, 5 to 8-year-olds, and a comic book targeting children 9 to 12-year-olds. And the information that we can gather from these webinars will also inform the retelling of the Kalinago story, the retelling of the Kalinago narrative, and which will inform like future productions, publications, audiovisual productions, documentaries, and so on. So these webinars are designed to bring out the critical issues and perspectives of different sectors of Kalinago community. Hence, the elders, the chiefs, the youth, the former chiefs and so on, and now the women. So we get a broad perspective, a cross-sectorial perspective on the issues. Let me now do a short bio on each of these panelists. I will do it as in the seating order, starting with Gweneth here. Okay, Gweneth Frederick. Gweneth Cyrille Frederick is the manager of the Kalinago Barana Ote, KBA. Previously, she served as compliance officer for the Dominica Social Security for the Eastern District. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Management with International Business from the Kville campus of the University of the West Indies, UE. Before university, Mrs. Frederick was the Community Liaison Officer for the Caribbean Development Bank funded Kalinago Territory Capacity Building Project. She has also served as an Information Officer at the then National Development Corporation, NDC, and as the Marketing Officer assigned to the European countries. Additionally, she is a member of the Kalinago Events Committee and President of the School Parents Teachers Association. And then we have Natasha Green. Yes, you might want to just tag her. Next in line here is Natasha Green. She was born and raised in the hamlet of Saliba in the Kalinago territory. For most of her teenage years, she was an active youth leader and community volunteer. Previously, she served as technical officer of the Ministry of Tourism from 2017 to 2021 and the Community Youth Development Officer of the Ministry of Kalinago Affairs from 2013 to 2017 as an intern under the National Employment Program, NEP. She holds a bachelor's degree in sociology from the University of the West Indies, Kville campus in Barbados, and is currently pursuing a master's degree in project management. Natasha Green is a founding member of the Kalinago Connections Incorporated, a local NGO which is focused on supporting socio-economic development in the Kalinago territory. She is an avid entrepreneur who owns and manages Chilu Kanawa Enterprises, her own indigenous brand, which includes a restaurant and souvenir component promoting traditional cuisine. Additionally, she is the current cluster project manager for the Dominica Community-Based Tourism Project, which targets the Kalinago services providers and the Dominica Essential Oils and Spice Cooperative. Natasha hopes to continue using her business and brand to promote Kalinago heritage through traditional cuisine, creating everlasting experience for locals and visitors alike. Natasha Green. 3, Miranda Langlais. Miranda Langlais Aka, or also known as the Kalinago Cultural Queen, was born June 17, 1965 and is the 4th of several siblings. At the age of 12, she joined the Carifuna Cultural Group, which spurred her passion for culture. Upon completion of the junior secondary program, she continued her education pursuits at the Dominica Social Center and was certified in early childhood education. She then taught at the Saliba and Badaka preschools for 2 and 3 years respectively. In 1982, she attended the Powwow celebrations as a member of Carifuna in Canada and received theater training. She further represented Carifuna at Carifesta in Barbados in 1981, Trinidad in 1994, St. Kitts in 2000, Suriname in 2008, and Trinidad in 2015. As her first love for culture grew, she became empowered and founded the Carina Cultural Group in 1993. For the past 15 years, she hosted the Miss Kalinago and Princess Natari pageants. For her contribution for cultural preservation, she received an award and appreciation from Dominica's Independence Committee in 1993, the Amerindian Legend Award from the Trinidad and Suriname Indigenous Organization in 2010, an award for her cultural contributions from the Ministry of Kalinago Affairs in 2013, and the Crest of Her Achievements, a special recognition award at the Golden Drum Awards in 2016 from the National Cultural Council. And in 2021, she was part of the Dubai Dominica delegation to have represented Dominica at the World Trade Show. Mrs. Langlais continues to leave her mark, and as she gallantly leads the Carina Cultural Group. Miranda Langlais. The next person is Anette Sandford. Anette Sandford was born and raised in Seneco in the Kalinago territory. The loss of her mother at the age of 7 led to her learning to care for herself and others at a tender age, ultimately defining her trajectory to become a nurse. She holds an Associate of Arts in Nursing from the Dominica State College, bachelor's degree in nursing from the University of Edinburgh, postgraduate certificate in healthcare administration from St. Lawrence College in Canada, and is currently pursuing a master's degree in international public health with the University of Liverpool. After working for 11 years as a registered nurse in Dominica, she moved into the political arena where she contested the office of Kalinago Chief. In 2019, that happened in 2019. She owns and manages Natari Care Services, a caregiving agency that offers vocational training to geriatric caregivers, and is the founder and chair of Kibe Kuati Inc., an NGO in the Kalinago territory focused on empowering the indigenous people. Annette Sandford is a farmer, wife, and mother, and currently serves in Parliament as an opposition senator for the United Workers' Party. Annette Sandford. And finally, Willa Cyrille. Willa Cyrille is a teacher by profession for over 32 years. She currently works at the Seneco Primary School. She's a graduate of the Dominica Teachers College and holds a certificate in education from the University of the West Indies and a diploma in business administration from Cambridge University. She's a certified hospitality department trainer and an ICDL certified coach. Ms. Cyrille is a community activist. She has served on various committees and is now a part of the Gullet Maho River Hamlet Development Committee. She's a former manager of the Kalinago Barana Ote and volunteer presenter at the now defunct Voice of Life Radio and DBS Radio and the Government Information Service. Ms. Cyrille lives by a simple motto: put everything in the hands of God and you will see the hands of God in everything. Willa Cyrille. So thank you. These were the bios of the panelists, and let me just, well, of course, it's always a pleasure to pass the microphone on to the Honorable Minister Cozier Frederick, who will chair the panel and take care of the rest of the proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Washler. Thank you to the listening audience. Just want to thank our sponsors this evening, the Emo News, UNDP and the staff, DBS Radio, and also the KBA for this wonderful venue we're in Kalinago Space, and also Digicel, who sponsors the Indigenous Voices on a Friday evening. So this is a special edition part 2 of the Indigenous Voices, covered live in the Kalinago Space by the DBS Radio. And so last evening we concluded a conversation with the elders, and 2 points that stood out apart from the questions that were answered are the view that there are things within the Kalinago Space and Dominica that makes us similar, so we have to look at the common heritage. And also there was a heavy leaning to looking at the time of abundance for answers to the questions as it relates to making Waiti Kubuli a climate resilient country. And so I'm excited this evening to join the wonderful ladies at the table here. 5 very powerful ladies, and as they share their experiences and share their views on the various questions we are looking at tonight. And if you realize in the conversation, the questions are pretty much standard. However, the youth, the elders, and the academics and historians have all answered those questions through their very own perspective. And that is the objective of that particular webinar, to look at some very salient issues, but to answer it from your own experiences. And so I'm excited this evening to join in and welcome these wonderful folks. Those of you in the audience, put your hands together for these wonderful people on the stage here. Because I think the women in a civilization are the carriers of heritage. And so we have no choice, Washla, but to honor them. It's not by chance, and we have no choice. And so I'm happy to be here with them tonight. And so we will go for the questions. The rules of this conversation is very simple. Every panelist will answer in about 5 minutes one of the questions. I will sort of summarize and make the connections. And during the conversation, we'll have questions from the audience online. And we'll make an attempt to have these questions answered by the panel itself. So I'm excited to start off the ball. And the first question, the wonderful ladies here, we begin with looking at the traditions of the Kalinago and how it has helped to shape Dominica. And in your view, what are the most important contributions that the Kalinago continue to make to Whitey Kubuli's progress? So I'll give the floor to Mrs. Frederick, and she's my wife, by the way. She's my wife. Yeah, she's my wife, yeah. So I'm taken. And she's also the manager of this wonderful establishment. So Mrs. Frederick, the floor is yours. How has the Kalinago heritage and traditions helped to shape Whitey Kubuli, and what are some of the important contributions that we have made to the progress of Whitey Kubuli? Mrs. Frederick.
Mabrika. To you, Mr. Frederick, Honorable Frederick, as moderator and your co-moderator, to everyone listening via email and DBS, and most importantly, to the ladies sitting at the table with me. Mabrika to you. How has the Kalinago heritage and traditions helped shape Dominica? Well, because the Kalinago control on Whitey Kubuli, they were able to keep, or we were able to keep the island uncolonized for a period longer than anywhere else. This meant that Kalinago traditions and skills were also maintained longer here than anywhere else. Our knowledge of plants, wild plants, and their uses, both medicinal and recreational, and the value and properties of these various kinds of woods and the building techniques have also survived. We can call on the names of some of the trees like balata and carapit and zikak as fruits, and kashima. You know, we have some of the communities in Dominica that still carry the Kalinago name. For example, Kalibishi, Koliho, one of the community hamlets here in the Kalinago territory, Bataka, Meru, Biosh, and I'm sure you all know a lot more. Also, if you look around Dominica, we will notice that our architecture has impacted Dominica, how Dominicans build their homes, not just in the Kalinago territory, but if you look at some of the buildings in Roseau, they are built what we call Kalinago style. And those were the buildings that withstood Hurricane Maria. Fishing is one of the primary activities of the Kalinago people. And now fishing is a big industry in Dominica, but fishing was just a simple way of life for our Kalinago people. That was how the men fed their families, fishing and hunting. We now have what we call the Community Day of Service, but we can attribute that back to the Kalinagos, what we call Kudme, you know, where you go to help each other. But now, you know, we have given it a name and call it Community Day of Service. So this is a Kalinago construct. The boat making, you know, we use our boats. The Kalinagas were famous for boat making. We are still very famous for boat making. And there are boats from our Kalinago boat makers in most of the communities in Dominica that do fishing. They even do, they can even amend them to take motors and not just using the oars. Trading, way before ferries and cargo boats came into play. The Kalinagos were trading up and down the waters, you know, that was our backyard. That's how nowadays we go to Roseau. Before we would have gone to Saints and Guadeloupe and Martinique to shop. So we're always up to date on cheese and sausage and biscuits and other other spirits. And we ask what is the most important contribution that the Kalinagos have made to Dominica's progress. And when we look at tourism, you cannot come to Dominica and not take a visit to the Kalinago territory. You cannot not come to the Kalinago Barana Uti. You cannot live without owning a Kalinago basket or some form of Kalinago art or craft. Agriculture. The Kalinagos were also known for the way that they farmed the land. And that was what the women did. The women in the Kalinago tribe were the ones who planted the gardens, the cassava and everything else, while the men went out and hunted and they fished. And the women stayed home and took care of the families and took care of the gardens. So they were the ones who knew the right moon to plant. If their husbands came home with a bad stomach ache, they were the ones who knew what to make. If your husbands were tired, they know what tea to give you, to ensure a nice, calm sleep. So, the women are powerful, and we still are up to today. But while we talk about the most important contribution of Dominica, of the Kalinagos to Dominica's progress, we need to look inward and talk about education. Because at present, all our government-owned primary schools are manned and managed by women. And all of the positions within the Kalinago territory, that are quote-unquote important and are very powerful, they are held by women. I manage the Kalinago Barana Ote. Next to me is Natasha Green. She is the owner and manager of Tilukanawa. She's also the cluster manager for the Kalinago Cluster Project, which is a $300,000 project that Compete Caribbean and the Ministry of Tourism is implementing within the Kalinago territory and the Southeast. We have Miranda, who is a cultural activist. We have Senator Sandford. We have Willa, who is a teacher and an activist, community activist. We have lawyers. We have doctors. In every sphere of the profession in Dominica, you can find a Kalinago. So we are, in our own way, making headway in changing or in helping to shape Dominica's progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Frederick. And just to wrap up quickly what she said, she spoke to, the fact that the resistant efforts of the Kalinago people ensured that the White Kibbulis land space remains safe, and so there's a longer traditional experiences that survive in that space. The medicine, the architecture, the village names, and the fishing, and the building, and the concept of kudme, lending a hand, trade, and also the Kalinago space is one that speaks highly of in the tourism circles, and also in agriculture. There's been a lot through the fisher folks, but she made a very, very important point, and as you can see from the head table here, we have women being very powerful professionals, and so women have been a pillar, it appears to me, within the Kalinago community and also at the national level as white Kubulians. And we will move on to Natasha, just briefly, heritage and traditions, how it has helped to shape Dominica, and sort of what are the most important contributions that we have made to white Kubuli. Natasha, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. For those of you who are present here with us and those who are listening via social media, MO News and DBS, thank you very much, Mrs. Frederick, for your contribution thus far and for leading the conversation with the rest of us. So the three key points that I want to speak about is the impact as it relates to tourism, the Kalinago language, and the arts and crafts. So Dominica is very reliant on the tourism industry as one of our most prominent industries, which contributes to our economic development. And as a Kalinago community on its own, we add value to that sector as a special niche within a destination. The community exemplifies cultural tourism, indigenous tourism, community-based tourism, which increasingly visitors are looking to indulge in. It is not only our heritage sites and attractions, But it is also our reliance on traditional practices like boat building, cassava bread making, um, craft making, traditional housing, which to a certain extent has been commodified, but it still helps to create an appeal to visitors who are intrigued by different cultures and who want to learn and immerse into different cultures throughout the world. Essentially, marketing of Dominica is not done without the inclusion of the Kalinago people or the indigenous people of Dominica. If you look on every magazine, every brochure, every website, every video recording, there is some semblance of indigenous people or there's some information related to the indigenous Kalinago people of Dominica as a must-see when you visit Dominica. Sometimes you may not even be aware that your image, or as a Kalinago person, your image is being used on a brochure or magazine. If you visit a local supermarket, for example, recently I have seen that some of these supermarkets are printing Dominican images, and some of them have Kalinago women or craft makers on their packaging. Sometimes we're not aware of it, but we are used as part of the packaging for Dominica as a general destination. Despite being an ecotourism destination, Dominica is recognized as one of the countries which has the last official settlement of indigenous people, and as such, we add to the product that Dominica is offering. As it relates to language, for the average Afro-Dominican, it is probably easy to dismiss the idea that Kalinagos has little contribution to Dominica. But these are some of the people themselves who reside in communities which has retained the indigenous Kalinago names for those communities. For example, you have Itasi at Penville Vacas. You have Tukari, which is popular for the Keeping It Real restaurant. Kulibistri, Layu, Kana Heritage Park, all these areas. And these communities have not only retained indigenous names, but they also have branded opportunities or offerings related to those names. For example, you have Itasi cottages or Kalibishi lodges. So they have retained the names and they have branded offerings around the indigenous names within those communities. Other local initiatives have sought to adopt original Kalinago names for sites. Up to recently, the Casibruce Tourism Development Committee has adopted the indigenous name for the community, which is Anskunari. So they are now Anskunari Tourism Development Committee. You have local chefs who are adopting Kalinago words and names into their menus. For example, you have Nyanda Charles, Chef Nyanda Charles, who has recently launched the Watu open fire cooking event. And they are sort of incorporating our indigenous language into whatever they're offering. In addition to that, you have, on the national level, you have the adoption of the Waiti Kubuli, which is the original name Uwaiti Kubuli for Dominica, tall is a body. You have the Waiti Kubuli Artists Association, you have the Waiti Kubuli Waiti Kubuli National Trail, you also have Waiti Kubuli Adventure Tours and more. So even while there has been a call to change Dominica's original name, Dominica to this original name as Waiti Kubuli, it's not possible at this time, but at the national level you can see the influence where individuals, businesses, groups are adopting some semblance of the indigenous language into whatever they're doing. So I think I have 0 minutes left. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Natasha, for this. Briefly, she highlighted tourism, and I think this is a key point here in her presentation, and making connection with what Mrs. Frederick said earlier on, and adding value within the White Kubulian space. Tourism is key, and in the marketing of the country itself. So that's a key point here. And it would appear from the conversation from Miss Natasha here that all types of tourism can actually function within that space. Ecotourism, cultural tourism, and community tourism in its entirety. And also she spoke about the language. And it appears to me that the language is very much alive. because it's alive in the names of people, in the name of companies, in concepts, in villages, in sites, plants and animals, and what we now know as Creole is actually leans heavily on that language. So the language seems to be very, very much alive. The Kalinago Queen, are you ready? I will say that we want to know what's your views on the Kalinago heritage and tradition and how they have helped to shape Dominica or Waitukubuli. And in your view, what are the most important contributions that we have made to Dominica's progress? Thank you so much.
Mabrika, to our Minister of Kalinago Affairs and Mr. Frederick, to our moderator, Oshla, and of course to the various media platform, of course to my colleagues right here. Back in the days before colonization, Kalinago women played a significant role in the Kalinago community. So one to the role that they performed was assisting women in delivering babies. Midwifery, in local term known as Sharks Farm. Here are a number of things and midwife would advise and expecting mothers to do before, during, and after the baby is delivered. For mainly healing, cleansing, and towards of evil spirit, they believe that taking a purge, the baby would be born with a beautiful skin. Before the midwife would prepare a purge with some herbal medicines for the pregnant woman, they could get rid of blood clots, itches, and pain. Drink boiled leaves, castor leaves, okra leaves, and also other herbal medicines. So our Kalinago women played a significant role in Dominica, in Waitukubuli, especially in the herbal medicines and what you call our traditional doctors. Right now you have the modern facilities, the health facilities. But before, our Kalinago traditional doctors, women doctors, plays a significant role in delivering babies, taking care of the elderlies, and using herbs. This knowledge, we was able to expand it to the Dominican. And so this is what we call resilient, because they have, helped to deliver babies. Although we didn't have, modern day facilities, but they knew the herbs and they knew what to do. For example, if a woman would get pregnant during the full moon, they believe that, that child would be born like the moon phase. So, yeah, like your babies, yes. We have played, our Kalinago women has played a significant role in health and well-being, health care. In other contributions, we had our Kalinago women has participated in national pageants, like the Queen pageant, National Carnival Queen pageant, and then they have won, several national Queen pageants. And then you had people like, you had persons like Anthea Burton, Kathy Burton, Francilia Eger, Nakita Bruno, Nadira Lando, Natasha Flosak, and many more. So we, the Kalinago people, has played a very significant role in contribution to Dominica's culture. and heritage. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miranda. Thank you so much, our Kalinago Queen here. I think she added some serious value to the conversation just now. Apart from the tourism and keeping all of the village names and agriculture, she added a very important piece, the health and wellness piece. And in a sense, the conversation she's adding here is that what we speak now as wellness and healthcare is something that is not new at all. It's something that existed within the Kalinago civilization. And so the delivering of babies, she's what the Shasfam, the use of medicines, and what we now know to be alternative medicines, what our people use, and also how do we detect features as it relates to pregnancies, etc. But she also made a very important point regarding the importance of women on the national level. And so the women involved in pageantry. So we know for a fact they are the women who have won the Carnival Queen pageants and also the WOP Duet pageants. And so we have not only kept that pageantry and the livelihood of women or the actions within the Kalinago space, well, we have added that at the national level. And we have a little queen here, a little princess here, a couple of years ago, Adicia Burton, who won the pageant as a junior queen. And so you see, we have had that experience. So I'm very excited that you could add those two pieces, Miranda, Kalinago Queen, the medicine part, and also the pageantry part. Anette, Senator Anette, would like to weigh in. You want me to just go for the question, or are you good to go?
Fine.
You're fine. You're good to go. Let's roll.
A special good evening to you, Mr. Frederick, Honorable Frederick. Good evening to Mr. Rabes and to the organizers and the rest of the team. Thank you for inviting me here. I must say it's not the first time that I'm being invited to a forum where the Honorable Frederick has helped organize. So I think that's commendable because we are setting the standards for parliamentarians and how we should work together to help build our community. One of the profound ways I believe that Kalinago people have helped shape Dominica is through their ecological and conservation practices. These practices, I believe, have helped and assisted and somehow forced Dominica to remain true to its identity, that is the nature island of the Caribbean. And just to bring into context what I'm saying, I just want to share with you a book that I got. It says, The History of the Island of Dominica. I got it as a gift. And it is written by Thomas Atwood and his experiences during the 1700s and what he thought of the indigenous people back then. So in 1791, he wrote, "It is much to be regretted that since this island has been in the possession of the English, so little pains have been taken to cultivate a union with these people, as they might be capable of essential service to its internal security, especially against the accumulation of runaway Negroes in the time of peace, and in war, they might be induced to join its defense, should it be invaded. Yet, they are permitted to roam wherever their fancies lead them, as much unnoticed as if no such people were in existence. They are men as well as we, are born with the same degree of sensibility, and by proper encouragement might be of material benefit to a country which was originally their own." So that's his thoughts in 1791. And we fast forward to now, 2022, 131 years later. Look at us now. Indigenous people, internationally recognized indigenous people, are more visible around the world. And that is because of our conservation and ecological practices. And I will tell you why. 20% of indigenous people around the world, we have lands that are more fertile and rich, and we have a lot more biodiversity than any other communities around the world. 80% of biodiversity live in indigenous community. 80% of the world's biodiversity live in indigenous community. And even the parrots, they say, that escaped to wherever. We see them in the Kalinago territory. I see them in my garden. I hear them. So animals feel safe to live in our communities, and Dominica is no different. When we look at the Kalinago territory, we see that the Kalinago territory is very densely forested. And there are some areas that you do not have people residing in yet, like areas in Concord. There are vast amounts of lands that are not residential. And so, because of these practices, we kind of forced Dominica on a whole to remain the nature island. And so, the hotels and the resorts that are being built right now, when you hear of them, you hear of renewable energy. And when you visit them, you will see perhaps the Lauma ceilings and the Lauma lampshades and the vetiver mats, because all these things reminds us that we are the nature island. And the Kalinago people, particularly our arts and craft, reminds people that this is the nature island. When you walk through the Kalinago territory, including my home, you will see that we still use things like the calabash and the bamboo cups, because these are what we use, and we can throw them away whenever we want to, and they will disintegrate and add value to the soil. So that is one of the ways that I think that we help shape Dominica by our practices. And so researchers have realized that this is very important, because industrialization has had a negative impact on the world. We have built numerous and large buildings that have destroyed our forests. We have been manufacturing a lot of plastic products that destroy our marine system. And so we have to find ways to maintain balance in the world. And they are now looking to the indigenous community to help find that balance and help find that solution. One of the most powerful ways I believe that we have also added to the most important thing that I believe that we have contributed to Dominica is wealth. It is not a subject that people feel comfortable to talk about, but I guess I have the task of doing that. When the island was colonized, when people came here, they came with the intention to wipe us out, to literally get rid of us, exterminate us. But unfortunately, that did not come through. We resisted, and we resisted for a number of years. And when the Declaration of Independence came, it was a requirement that our Kalinago chief sign the document in order for Dominica to gain independence. Because the British saw us as a nation. They saw that we had our own system of governance, we had our unique way of living, and therefore they couldn't leave us out. So we had to sign this document, and because of that, we had our African brothers and sisters inheriting vast amounts of land, which of course has a lot of value and equates money and wealth. Secondly, the indigenous people help attract funds to our country. And that is one of the key ways that we get funding. Majority of the funding we receive, it's because we have an indigenous community here. And one of the typical examples we have had is through the Venezuelan fund. We as indigenous people received $10 million US because we applied for grant funding. We received this funding. Unfortunately, it was not used the way that we intended. But this is just an example of how governments can use the indigenous people to get funds to do the various projects around Dominica. And I'm hoping that as the time goes on, we will gain more respect and we'll be more involved in the discussions in terms of use of funds. And there are organizations and there are other people who tend to apply for grants on behalf of indigenous people. But oftentimes, we don't get the full benefits of this grant funding. And I am very happy with how the UNDP project is being carried out right now. We see a lot of Kalinagos involved. We see Kalinagos that are coordinators, project managers. And so this is the way that we are hoping that Dominica will continue to work and thrive. So I will stop here for now because the other points have already been spoken of.
Thank you so much, Senator Sandford, for the input. I think a key point here in the input in the conversation is regarding the the ecology of our country, and also the conservation practices. And this wonderful piece by Atwood in 1791 is a wonderful piece. He speaks a lot about the general geographical space. He speaks about canal building, development, etc. It's a wonderful piece. one of the few British people who sort of wrote a positive narrative on the Kalinago heritage. And speaking to the biodiversity, which is important, very, very important, because when you look along the Kalinago space, we will see a lot of that remains intact, and it was only done so by the firm actions of our Kalinago warriors, and also importantly, we are into the resilient movement, and how do we use our arts and craft as normal utility or vessels at our homes is a very, very important point. And she made a point here, and I have quoted it out here. The world and Dominica looks, in paraphrasing, looks to us to find balance. I think that's a key point. Looking to us, the indigenous people, to find balance. And the final point, wealth, very, very important. We know for a fact that the colonizers extracted from our countries and developed the cities around Europe. And also, an important point, the indigenous face, the indigenous narrative, also helps to bring in revenue or to attract funding from international agencies and international governments. So thank you so much for that, Senator Sandford. Willa, you ready to roll?
Most definitely.
Let's do this, Willa. Let's do this.
Good evening to everyone hearing my voice, whether it's via social media or in the Kalinago Barana Uri space. I would like to start by saying that I think women would make fantastic FBI officers, because the level of information that has been disseminated by these great women, it left me wondering what should I speak to, because all the topics have been covered, so to speak. However, I would like to add by saying that our tradition and rich heritage has been the pillar on which our economic, cultural, and other national gains has been molded and piggybacked on. And I think Ms. Sandford spoke to that very well when she spoke about the Venezuela Fund, so I'm not going to go into that. But we can safely say that Dominica is what it is today because of the steadfastness and the resilience of the Kalinago people. Not only did our ancestors fight physically to protect this island, but they preserved their beliefs. Whether you call him God, the Great Spirit, we all believe in a supreme being. And our ancestors believe in that. And today, we have various religious beliefs, but our ancestors' beliefs shines through. Their cultural practices and cuisine, like the barbecue that we love so much, and the rich knowledge of nature, which is the alpha and the omega of any resilience attempt by any nation, was epitomized by our Kalinago ancestors. And long before all this greenhouse effect, which is resulting in our flora and fauna depletion, our ancestors had the foresight and the wisdom to treat nature with the utmost respect that it deserved. They were not as callous in their behavior as we are today, because right now we are grateful that the UNDP is reforesting the Kalinago territory. Back then, our ancestors used prudence in harvesting the trees. They didn't just go and cut trees discriminatingly and say, okay, that one is not good, let's just leave it on the ground. That is not the way it was done. They had a science to doing things in their own way. So they preserved that for us. And in so doing, our generation, we now know the joys of simple yet very important things, like drinking water straight out of the rivers or ravines or sus as we call them, and even from our pipes. Bathing in our rivers, walking in the rain with no fear, breathing in clean, fresh air with no worries at all. It is because our ancestors had the foresight to treat nature with reverence that we are now enjoying this in 2022. Their reverence of the Great Spirit, and by extension Mother Nature, is what has the rest of the so-called developed world, because development is a relative term. Because when we grew up as children, we were poor, but we didn't know we were poor. It is only when we started comparing what we saw on television and we heard on the radio, then we started looking and saying that we were poor. But the Kalinagos were never poor. We were never poor. We have always been rich.
So the so-called developed world is aching to own a piece of this paradise, to reside here and be part of this eco-existence that we sometimes take for granted. I dare say, our ancestors are the ones who has the wheels of our economic sector still churning today. Our contributions are everywhere, maybe not highlighted as it should, but we are a very present contributor to the economy of this country. In tourism, as Mrs. Frederick and all the others highlighted, I'm not going to go into that. In the health sector, which I'm very happy Mrs. Langlais alluded to, because right now, we know that health and wellness is the economic activity that we should be looking at. Our legal system, education, and the list goes on and on where our indigenous persons are engaged and performing very well. I think to that, in his wisdom, the PM did not make an error in appointing our PAL rep responsible for the environment, because he reckons that Mr. Frederick, in his passion for his Kalinago heritage, would be the best suited minister for connecting with nature on all levels by virtue of him being Kalinago. If we are not careful and proactive, our environment and our very economy may cease to exist. So please, Mr. Frederick, please don't mess it up. Thank you.
Yes, I heed your warning, my Willa, and for the listening audience, Willa is my sister-in-law. So Willa, briefly, FBI agents, full body inspectors, all right, or female body investigators, FBI agents. I think that's a cool way to look at you guys here this evening. And he spoke about the resilience of the people, which is important, and speak to the cuisine and the nature and knowledge. And you made a very important point, and I quoted, treat nature with utmost respect. And I think that is very key. And you made this point also that the Kalinago nation had a science to doing things. So it was not done haphazardly. So that's a key point to keep here. And so you spoke about Mother Earth, or Mother Nature, and all of the contributions that we would have made by honoring that glorious and wonderful tradition. Just to wrap up this first question, I want to add this piece. We're doing this evening because we want to have a new narrative, a new story that is told. The conquerors always tell a story, his story, history. And we have a chance in 2022 to recraft the narrative. But it's important that we do this, and I'll tell you why. Andre Gunther Frank, a German sociologist and an economist, he wrote this. And he says, we cannot hope to formulate adequate development theory and policy for the majority of the world's population who suffer from underdevelopment without first knowing how their past economic and social history gave rise to the present underdevelopment. So, in essence, we have to look back to move forward. There are some people in this circle and some people in the listening audience and the general public who think that, why is it important to go in the past? And there are many people who wrote about this. Marcus Garvey, Machiavelli, a number of folks who spoke about it is important to know where you have been to kind of craft where you're going from. I know we will move on with those questions, and it's important to do this, but it's important to know where you have come. I think the women did here a most wonderful job at you agree with me, Washla? Indeed, indeed. And Washla is that guy who understands women and their contribution, right, Washla? Yes. The second question, and I just want to go into this very quickly. We want to look at the impact of that heritage. So we know what it is. We know the traditions, the music, the health, the wellness, the nature. But we want to see how that adds value to the future of Dominica, or the future of Waitukubuli. And I'm excited about this because as a policymaker, it helps, because if we want to do things moving forward, we have to lean on the ideas of folks. And within that also to consider that within the context of resilience. So what is it that we can take off from our traditions and heritage to craft a better future for Waitukubuli? Mrs. Frederick, Madam, you want to start off? Um, and so it is important that we do it because we're hoping to be the first climate resilient country in the world. And I suspect we already are. We just have to ensure that we keep on doing the practices that we have to ensure that progressive movement. Mrs. Frederick.
Okay, Kalinago heritage for the future of Dominica in the context of Dominica becoming the first climate resistant country, and also in the context of women. As we have said earlier, women had the most important role in Kalinago culture as planters of vegetables and root crops, while the men cleared the lands and hunted. The women would have made the baskets and the cassava, and we also produced clay pots and bowls. And for future generation, the maintaining of this skill has to be passed on. And with the help of our Kalinago people and other Dominicans, we'll become more self-sufficient. And we have these small cottage industries, yes, within the Kalinago territory, and we can take an example from that. But we need to monetize these industries. We have the craft shops and we have the craft vendors who are very good at what they do. They are excellent at making the baskets and are excellent at making the bamboo cups and the ones from the coconut. But we need to be able to add value to these and monetize these industries for the women. And if we can do that, the rest of Dominica can take a page from the Kalinago territory. The use of our architecture, as we spoke about earlier. Our architecture survived Hurricane Maria. The rest of Dominica should look to the Kalinago territory when rebuilding to ensure that the climate resilient homes that we are building, has something to do with our Kalinago architecture. The Kalinagos are the pioneers of health and wellness, as we have said this evening, and that is no joke. And our knowledge of herbs and teas and the uses and the natural baths. Those of you who have come to the Kalinago Barana Ute and have requested a bath from our shaman who is here tonight will know the benefits of these baths. And this is the way to go, because the entire world is now all about health and wellness. And this is what the Kalinagos are all about. And I know there are persons listening and persons within the Kalinago space who will swear by the herbs that they use. That's why they did not contract COVID-19. And even when they got it, the medicines that they made for themselves was what cured them instead of going, further. So this is who we are and this is what we are. So if we can develop on that, we will be pioneers in making money in the use of teas and herbs. The return to agriculture. The Kalinagos have a lot of land, and the Kalinago territory has a lot of land that is underutilized. So if we can incentivize our young people to go back to the land. There are markets for the crops. You go and you plant these things, these crops. Everybody will benefit. The craft industry, as I spoke about earlier, we need to find a way to incorporate the things that we make. It's not just for the visitors coming to the different sites. We have to incorporate it into all of Dominica. We have to find a way to get our craft into the government headquarters, into the embassies there, to ensure that the waste paper baskets and the placemats and the lauma covering the bulbs and all of these things, they are Kalinago. Dexia has worked with the craft vendors and we have added value to them. If you realize now you get a bag that it has different colors and it's so beautiful. So if we can get this out there, the sky's the limit for the Kalinagos in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Frederick. Briefly, maintenance of the culture and traditions for the next generation is a key thing here. And that, in her view, leans heavily to self-sufficiency. And speaking to the health and wellness, pioneers can continue to make strides in this. And how do we utilize our lands moving forward? And so in essence, she's speaking about our lands in the Kalinago space, and that space being the sort of food basket for Dominica itself, or Waitukubuli, and the region, and how do we look at the craft industry and add value to it. So thank you so much, Mrs. Frederick. Natasha, you want to come in here and add your bit, the conversation?
Okay, the impact of Kalinago heritage for the future of Dominica as it relates to building the first climate resilient country in the world. I think, and I will just touch on what Mrs. Frederick has mentioned, our building techniques and architecture continues to sort of influence the way forward in strengthening our new building approach, I would say. Following Hurricane Maria in 2017, a lot of people were in awe that the Kalinago, Barana, Ote, as well as a few older housing stock kind of sustained the winds of a Category 5 hurricane. And following Hurricane Maria, Dr. Honeychurch himself gave a whole segment on why he believed that Kalinago architecture should be incorporated into the new housing standards. We have sort of been influencing other nationals to incorporate that type of architecture into their new designs. We now have, for example, we have outside of the KBA, which has taken the approach to retain the strength of the structure post-Hurricane Maria. We have new tourism products being developed and incorporating the architecture into their new concepts. You have the new Cabe structure being developed at the peninsula in Scott's Head, for example. You have the new designs being incorporated at the Kana Heritage Park in Capuchin. So we have some level of influence in terms of our architecture being utilized throughout the nation, not just in the Kalinago community. Similarly, we have other service providers, individuals who are trying to incorporate designs into their own little cottage industries, especially those who are on the beach fronts, building tiki huts, which resembles the little Kalinago huts with vetiver or shingles or something of a similar nature. So the architecture has been retained. It continues to influence and be infiltrated into the national building standards. A second thing is food security. Cassava or mayok is a unique staple of the Kalinago people, and it is now recognized as one of the most resilient crops to secure food security for the region. In recent times, you have seen ICA, FAO, Ministry of Agriculture, and other organizations supporting farmers to cultivate different varieties of cassava for subsistence level as well as for export and for added value products. Now you have non-Kalinagos pursuing added value products in terms of packaging mayok or doing cassava bread outside of the community. You now have right at Tranto, Mopo area, you have farmers packaging farine and mayok. You have at Kalibishi, farmers and business owners are pursuing the use of cassava into their business concepts. So even while we use it at subsistence level in the community for personal consumption and for visitors, but it has been, to a certain extent, been adopted by other non-Kalinagos as a food which can be sustained over time, a food which can be cultivated with minimal maintenance, can survive various climatic conditions, and the like. So these are the 2 points I'd like to touch on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natasha. Important point here. Another key point here, the architecture, and the point about including the designs into the new housing standards is a key point, very, very key. And also the new designs that seem to be taking root and using mechanical tools, etc. So very exciting stuff here. I'm going to call you Mimi tonight. That's it. Mimi, I want you to roll. Our Kalinago Queen. What can we do to add value to the future of Waitikuli by using what we have as our heritage, and how does that link with climate resilience? Yes, ma'am. You have the floor, Mimi.
All right, Mabrika. As the other speaker said about the architecture, I see especially the people who are living on the roadside, along the street road, that the our architecture should be they should be designed in Kalinago style. You know, Kalinago history or hot or whatever, and because what I have think is that when the visitors pass through the territory, they're only seeing concrete houses, and they are seeing galvanized houses. I think that there should be an educational program, an encouragement and support financially, and to teach or to tell our people that they need to enhance on the traditional houses. So when the visitors pass through the territory, they would see Kalinago structures. Another thing is that our legend sites. Our legend sites has played a very significant role in tourism, especially the Escaliateche. The Escaliateche has been known. It has been visited. It has a lot of visitors has visited the Escaliateche, over the years, and you have seen a lot of people have taken pictures, brochures, and magazines, and all the the natural features of the Escaliateche. I think that the Escaliateche should be improved, should have washroom facilities, they should have information centers, and also tour guides. We should train our Kalinago tour guide to tell the visitor, to tell the story of the visitors about the Escaliateche. We also have all the legend sites, like the Horseback Ridge, the right here at the Baranaute, the Mermaid, Basebule. We also have, the Spirit of the Rock, which is very important to our history. So we can develop the sites and promote it as a tourist attraction. Also, and they are secret, or they are sacred. I think that when we go to the sites, we have to pay homage, because they are power spots. And our ancestors was very respectful to those sites. There were ceremonies performed in those sites. And so, so the legend site has played a significant role in the tourism. And I think for future generation, we should teach our children to appreciate our legend sites, because these are holy sites. And also burial sites. Not only in the territory we have burial sites, we have all around the island. And sometimes it really hurt my heart to see that our burial sites has turned a dump site with all the garbages and whatever. So I think that we need to have a lot of education and, to educate our Kalinago people, our children, and the wider Dominican. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kalinago Queen here, speaking to the architecture and keeping the designs. And in her view, a nutshell is that it would help to show a difference in when you enter the Kalinago space. And so the encouragement of building local, with local materials, etc., is important for the future. And the intervention on the legends is an important part of it. It leans heavily to protection of the environment and resilience. And every indigenous community have myth and legend that tells of our existence as a people. And they're sacred sites, and these sites should be developed, I agree. And these sites should also be treated with respect by everyone. And so we have to go on a drive to educate about all those other sites across the country that are sacred sites, and that will add some more value to the tourism product. We're going to go into the conversation with Senator Sandford. Take it away.
Yes, so I kind of handled this question differently because I looked at what impact, what it is that we can do to impact Dominica's future. And I believe, I just want to share a quote first of all. Like it says, "It is one thing to open your eyes and admit that a change needs to be made, and it is a whole other thing to do the work required to achieve that change." And I share this quote because the indigenous people have been struggling for a very long time when we're talking about cultural survival and resurgence in our community. And we look at our people, the various aspects of the contributions that we make to Dominica currently. And really and truly, it does not equate through the Kalinago territory. When I say that to mean that not every Kalinago person are engaged in those practices. There are some families you may ask about the herbal medicines and they wouldn't know a thing. It's because they do not know. There are only few people in the Kalinago territory who engage in those practices. And I believe it is so important that we invest more into these areas. Our herbal medicine. Currently we just have 2 people I know, forgive me if I miss out anybody, but 2 people who do it on a commercial level, which is Fanny Ogis in Bataka and Franciscan Roy Ogis in Crevice River. How do we assist these people to expand? How do we assist them to pass on that knowledge to the younger children at the schools, the students? When we look at culture, the cultural dances that we can get so many benefits from, both commercially and also as a people locally, what are we doing to enhance these cultural groups who are still alive in the Kalinago territory? I have Miranda Langlais right here with me. Since I was a little girl at the Seneco Primary School, I know Miranda coming to the school and doing her best with the children. But what have we done to really empower her to continue that tradition and to pass it on, continue passing it on to the children so that it can continue? What about our boat making? Currently, I know Beto and this other gentleman from Sensi. There's only 2 people making boats in the Kalinago territory. How can we better assist our younger persons to learn that craft and move on to have a greater impact on the tourism industry? And of course, again, our homes. Well, I'm happy they mentioned it already, because when I speak of it, people tend to make a joke out of it and say, okay, do you want the Kalinago to live in huts? And I'm saying, no. There are houses that you can design in Kalinago architecture that are resilient. And if you look like countries with indigenous people like Canada, you have resilient home built of bricks, but it reflects the Kalinago culture or the indigenous culture. And that is what people need to understand and appreciate. So when we make requests, we are not only making it because we are being selfish, but because we want to maintain our cultural heritage. And when we look at our education system, and I've heard many comments say that the Kalinago people have survived colonialism or colonization. But currently, we are fighting colonization of the minds. We're fighting a system, we're fighting policies, programs, and state laws that we are mandated to follow. If our children go to school in the indigenous way, they'll be sent home because they have to follow the rules. If even our boys, when they go to school, they're encouraged to cut their hair short, they cannot go with long hair. These are rules that were made to assimilate us, to integrate us in the wider society and lose our culture. How do we help and keep this culture, these traditions alive? And all these, I believe, if we nurture it properly, if we invest in these areas, we can have a huge impact on Dominica in every aspect of it: agriculture, tourism, culture. And then we'd better be able to reap the benefits of all of these. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anette, Senator Sandford. Cultural survival is key, and how do we make investments in that cultural survival? Speaking about the dances and how do we pass on the traditions that seem to be vanishing from our space. And so this is an important point here. And how do we pass on that knowledge? And important to make investments, and this is very important here, to make investment in all of that knowledge. And the piece on education is also important. We are operating within a sort of capitalist society with laws, and some of those laws for all intents and purposes should be decolonized, for sure, and to ensure that aspects of the heritage are inculcated and that people understand that. And that's why I'm excited about this forum, because this forum will definitely inform on our concerns as an indigenous community. So I'm excited for those two very important key points here. Willa?
Okay, within the context of Dominica becoming the first climate resilient country in the world, as a nation, we need to look to the knowledge of the indigenous people. We can never overstate that. In health and wellness, as the ladies at the head table have said before, it is a multi-million-dollar industry, and more so now, as the world is reeling from the impact of COVID-19, we need to ask some very pertinent questions. Why is it that our people are living to ripe old ages? Why are we recovering so quickly from infections? It is not that we get the illness less severe from any other part of the world. It is because our bodies are resilient due to our eating habits, our general lifestyle of always being active in farming, in walking to and from places, our bush tea and our bush baths, as Mrs. Frederick said earlier, whether or not you believe it does have its impact. A wealthy nation is a healthy nation. We cannot dispute that. A resilient nation needs healthy people. And we, the Kalinagos, we hold the key to natural, resilient health and wellness, undisputed. The answer to many questions are right here in the Kalinago territory. But guess what? It is buried in the minds of our elders. We need to do comprehensive documentation before these people go to the great beyond. It is a pity, though, we do not see or we do not hear anybody hustling, not on the local level, not on the national level, in harnessing the knowledge, packaging it, marketing it, and creating economic activities out of it. We are not seeing that. Not only should we explore that knowledge within the parameters of keeping things in tune with nature, because really and truly, the only thing that we as a country have to peddle is our abundance of nature. The impact of the Kalinagos for the future is to promote, strengthen, and market our products and services to create economic wealth for our people rather than being objectified. The branding of Kalinago products need to be sent The branding of Kalinago products need to be at the center and upfront. Bringing our sites up to speed, like the Barana Ote and all the other tourism sites, needs to be brought up to full potential in order for us to capture that tourist dollar that is going to impact on our local economy and by extension, the national economy. Already the other ladies have spoken about all the architecture and the agricultural practices that need to come into the fore, because I know recently the Youth Parliament spoke about the legalization of marijuana. And there were all these pros and cons for legalization. However, decriminalization may be the way forward. In that way, it gives us, because I hear a lot of the ladies talking about herbs, and sometimes we say herb is for the healing of the nation. And we need the Kalinago herbs alongside the marijuana that was really not part of our tradition. But if there are healing properties to be gotten out of it, we need to work in tandem with the other herbs that the Kalinago people have been using over the years. So one of the things we need to do is to look at the branding of Kalinago products and ensure that whatever we have, our people benefit directly. And that is why I say we need to do this so that we won't be objectified. Because currently we are being used to create wealth, as Mrs. Sandford spoke to. We are being used to market the country, but most of it is not trickling down to us here. And if we are going to have any impact on the future of Dominica and its resiliency, we need to come back to the Kalinago people and begin doing all what needs to be done in terms of recordings, documentation, marketing, branding, and the list goes on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Willa. In a nutshell, Willa hit it's a very important point there about the knowledge of the indigenous peoples and eating habits and how that the health of a nation is actually its wealth. And that's an important point. And she strongly feels that in all our traditions and our parts of our heritage, we can answer some of the tough questions in how do we develop our country. But she's concerned about the documentation and the branding, which is key. And so we have an abundance of nature that she thinks should be used as capital investments to build wealth as we continue to look at a resilient country. And consideration should be given to our traditional herbal medicines and in relation to the move to use cannabis or marijuana for also doing that. And also, how do we factor in the rebranding of all of those aspects of heritage to build wealth. Very, very exciting times here, ladies and gentlemen, on the listening public. There's a wonderful quote I have seen in some of my research by a psychiatrist and political philosopher from Martinique, Frantz Fanon. And he wrote this wonderful book called The Wretched of the Earth, basically speaking to people who are underdeveloped and a minority people. And he says, colonialism hardly ever exploits the whole of a country. It contents itself with bringing to light the natural resources, which it extracts and exports to meet the needs of the mother country's industries, thereby allowing certain sectors of the colony to become relatively rich, but the rest of the colony follows the path of underdevelopment and poverty. So it's important that we have this conversation tonight to speak about the heritage, because we may run the risk of not making right decisions if we don't understand where we have come from. We're going into the third question here, and I just want to challenge the panelists here to leave the listening audience and people who are tuned in via the radio, etc. Some key aspects, key things you want them to remember or take away, that every Dominican person, everybody who's listening, should take away as to the importance of the Kalinago heritage. Something they could write in their notebooks, in their diaries, something they could etch on their walls, something they could use as a screensaver, something they could write down in the cornerstone of their house. And what are some of the takeaways that, at least four, that every Dominican person or every Whitey Kubulian should be aware of regarding the importance of the Kalinago heritage? Mrs. Frederick? Let's start the ball rolling. It'll be very nice to, yes, let's get the ball rolling. Thank you so much, Mrs. Frederick.
At the Barana Uti, as I was saying, at the Barana Uti, we get visitors every day. And the Dominican visitors who come through our doors, of recent, when I say recent, I mean 2-3 years, maybe even 5, they tell you that they have Kalinago ancestry. Their grandmother, their great-grandmother, grandfather, was a Kalinago, or have some, so they're 1/4, they're half, they're Kalinago. And it is wonderful to see that persons are claiming that ancestry, and they even go as far as wanting, to meet the shaman and have a ritual bath and get a Kalinago name. You get your Christian name, but they also want to be baptized with a Kalinago name, to show that they are Kalinago. And 4 takeaways I believe that every one of these Dominicans should be aware of regarding our Kalinago heritage, or their Kalinago heritage that they want to embrace, is that the Kalinagos, they need to know the sacrifices that the Kalinagos made in defending Dominica. They also need to understand the experience that the Kalinagos have with Mother Nature. We have this special relationship with the land. You know, we exist in harmony. If you plant a tree, if you cut a tree, you replace it. You don't overfish. You know, you only take what you need. We are here today because that's what our ancestors did. This is how our ancestors lived. They lived in harmony and they coexisted with the forest. This is what we need to do if we want our children to enjoy what we're enjoying today. Clean air, you know, herbs, medicines, vegetables, fruits, cassava, all of that what we're enjoying today, that we can plant so richly in our gardens. We need to be cognizant of all that. We need to take pride in being a Kalinago. When you walk in Roseau and people, you know, you see somebody talking down to a Kalinago, you should be able to defend them because this is who you are. This is who we are. We are the first peoples of the land. You know, Dominica belongs to us. So we need to walk with that level of confidence. Because people keep saying that Kalinagos are shy. No, they're not shy. Kalinagos are strong, and probably they don't speak until they have something important to say. They don't go just talking on every topic because they don't have something to say. They speak when it's important, and they make these are who Kalinagos are, and as women, this is how we behave. So we also believe that plans for Dominica, you know, the Kalinago people need to be included in these plans. You know, when you're making decisions, because we have the awareness of land use, on architecture, on fishing, on trade. You know, we are just experts in all fields. So, yes, we are. So this is something that all Dominicans should know, you know, about their Kalinago ancestry and their Kalinago heritage. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Frederick. Sacrifices made by our people is important to remember. Our ancestors died, were killed, genocide, and and we sacrificed our land, ourselves for our land and our blood, and so that's an important takeaway point. The experiences of Mother Nature, another very key point, and our defense of the identity, because you may well be discriminating against yourself because your bloodline may link to Kalinago heritage, and so it's important to understand that. And it appears to us that from all the conversation this evening so far, that we are just deadly. Yeah, we are experts. We're deadly, and so just whenever you say Kalinago person, that's a deadly guy or woman walking down the road. So solid stuff. Natasha, carry on.
Okay. As it relates to takeaways, I only have one major point to give. The negative stereotypes associated with our people can sometimes dissuade our young Kalinagos who grow up outside of the communities from identifying with their heritage. And I have seen it on several counts, being associated with other young people outside of the community. And it is disappointing to know that Kalinagos who are raised outside of the community do not identify with their own heritage simply because of the negativity that surrounds our people. But generally, there has been a lot of improvement, a lot of changes, and a lot of positive influences from our people. And their influence in various sectors and the social and economic landscape of Dominica. Not just Dominica, but outside of Dominica as well. National leadership now includes Kalinagos performing in various capacities. As minister, we have our minister here with us. Permanent secretaries, head of departments, principals, nurses, doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs. And most of all, they have been molded in their younger days to identify with the Kalinago consciousness or with their indigenous consciousness. Performing as historians promoting Kalinago heritage, cultural leaders, members of cultural groups, youth leaders promoting Kalinago pride and cultural preservation. So this has helped strengthen them rather than take away from their abilities to take up leadership roles outside of the community. And I don't understand why people would be shameful of identifying with their heritage. And as it has been mentioned earlier, for you to understand who you are and to know where you're going, you need to know your history and your background. And you need to embrace it to the extent that you feel that you come from a very strong people, an indigenous people. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natasha. The key point here, that all of the negative stereotypes that exist are around and continue to exist. This conversation tonight is helping to dismantle it, because and it is important that we understand that we operate on the local, national, and international level in terms of leadership. So it's important to stick to the identity that will add some value to the conversation, and that the Dominican public would realize that it's important to look at the identity of the Kalinago people as a very important piece to the development of our country. Thank you so much, Natasha, for this. Our Kalinago Queen, takeaway points for the listening public.
All right, so the Kalinago people should be seen as peaceful and loving people who welcome visitors with open arms, but should not be taken for granted. We should respect and honor for rescuing the piece of land that we enjoy today. The presence of the Kalinago heritage must be seen as an indication of resilience, and such more deliberated and calculated effort to need to be made in the recognizing this aspect of Kalinago survival. The Kalinago played an important role in the rescuing of many black slaves during slavery. This cannot and should not go unnoticed. Much of our local food, such as cassava, potato, papaya, herbs, brought to Dominica by our Kalinago ancestors, and we cannot and should not take these things for granted, not forget them. Stop the name calling. The name calling. We call each other by their race, Kwaib or Neg or Negwes. These terms, racism and hate, and let us respect and help each other to achieve success, just as when our ancestors fought to defend ourselves from the colonial masters. So, Kalinago people, my Kalinago people, my black brothers and sisters of Dominica, we need to respect ourselves. We need to stop that calling name, Negwes, Kwaib, Vie Kwaibsa, or Vie Negsala. We have to start doing healing. Now is the time for healing and reconciliation. Healing and reconciliation. That is the only way that our country can be healed. And we as human beings, as the two ethnic groups, we should, are just calling on the Dominican black brothers, who called us so much names that we did not deserve. We have done so much for Waitukubuli. And when, after colonization and after slavery was abolished, our black brothers and sisters, because they get a better opportunity and they was brought up in the British system, they were so-called, there was the bourgeoisie. And so that's why our people, our Kalinago people went, and they lived in our territory very simple and peaceful. Because why they didn't trust anybody again. They didn't want. That's why they say after a while, they say we were were talkative. But that was not true. We were smart people, we were intelligent, we are beautiful, we are loving. So we just have to respect each other. And if we have to, in order for us to move our country or beautiful white Tukubuli forward, we have to respect each other. And we have to honor each other, honor each other culture. We were in the same situation. we were in the same situation. When the colonial masters came, we survived with our strength, our resilience. And I always say that Kalinago women, we are the beautiful flowers of White Kumuli. Beautiful flowers. And so I am saying this word in a very emotional way. Just respect and respect each other.
Thank you very much, our Kalinago Queen. Take away points from here. Importantly, apart from the narrative of the colonizers, the story that we were savages and we were barbarians, we were very peaceful and loving people. And also, we were so peaceful and loving, the second point, that we assisted in the resistant efforts. So when you speak about the Negmao, bro, we assisted in Negmao. And another important point is that the idea of discrimination and stereotypes is something that we should dispel from the conversation, because it's a time for healing. And in that effort, we should show respect to all of humanity. Very, very important points. Annette, you want to come in at this time?
So my takeaway would be valuing our children. And I want to speak specifically to our Kalinago people, especially the parents. Our children are very important assets to the Kalinago culture and tradition. And we have to make an extra effort to ensure that they are trained in the right way. They said, train up a child in the way that he should go, and he will not depart from it. And that is what we have to really, really consider. If we want that tsunami of resurgence in the Kalinago territory in terms of tradition and culture, we have to invest in our children. For those of us, if we're not ready for children, do not make them. Do not leave them at the mercies of being abused and misused. Let's care for our children and train them up in the right way. When I sit with my family and my daughter, and she tells me, okay, I want to go into the Kalinago language, and I assist her, she's resisting. It's not that physical resistance, but it's resistance against the system that has been trying to assimilate us, so that the language can continue. And there are many other children who are talented in the artist field, in dance, in arts, in craft. We have to help them to, nurture these gifts and these talents to become people that are powerful and people that can, good leaders of the future. The second takeaway would be to care for our environment. This is a nature isle, and too many times we see so many forms of pollution around. It is time that we consider caring for our environment in a serious way. Let's stop the pollution, both to our rivers and our land. All right? Love and appreciate our differences. We are different. I'm Kalinago. You are not. We will never be the same, but we can work together. We can achieve things together. Accept our science. Even if you don't believe, well, currently our medicine is considered inferior, but to us it means a lot to us. When an elder tells you to take 2 leaves of a certain plant and drink it, we know we'll get better. Even if the nurses or the pharmacists don't believe that we will, we do. So accept our science and appreciate our differences. And lastly, I want to say to our Kalinago brothers, we are not victims. We were never victims and we will never be. So stop allowing yourself to believe that you are incapable or you are incompetent of doing things for yourself. And to our non-Kalinago brothers, stop treating us like we are victims. We have the competence, we have the capability to do things on our own. If you allow us, if you give us that space, we can spread our wings and fly. So allow us to exercise that right and allow us to just be ourselves and appreciate who we are. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Annette here. And so in a nutshell, one important point is that the Kalinago children are beautiful children, and they are intelligent children, and they are most wonderful people. It's important. Caring up for the environment, an important point here, and how do we treat with pollution. So that's a takeaway point. Our traditions lean heavily to that general principle. And important point for the listening public, to love and to appreciate our differences, and to love and appreciate the science and what we do as traditional practices. And also, important point, your consideration of us as victims should be dismissed completely. We're not victims. We have been dealt a strange hand, and we are now working our way to make that hand work for us. Very key, four very key and important points here. Willa, you're going to wrap up this section.
Okay. Sitting at the end of the table here, it's like everybody just, So I have a very difficult job to come up with 4 takeaways right now. However, I want to just say that I find we very serious at the head table. Yes, this is serious business. But these ladies are presenting and they're so wax. I mean, the outside world is going to say, wow, they're coming for us. And this is what we should be doing, taking back what is rightfully ours. And of the takeaways that I want to speak to, I want to remind Mrs. Langlais that sometimes when we use the word neg, there's no negative connotation. It's just that there are some things you just cannot say in English and have the same weight. And there are some things you just have to say and you just have to say neg, So sometimes we don't mean it in a bad way, but we shouldn't just eradicate it from our vocabulary because it serves its purpose sometimes, okay? So now that I've put some humor in there, here are my 4 takeaways. Strengthening of our culture and heritage is very essential. One way of doing that would be, first of all, to acknowledge and accept your inheritance of Kalinago heritage. Some of us are so resistant. It's like, if you just say, hey, you from Carib Reserve? Who that, me? Rose, why staying me? That sort of thing. And there are persons who do that, and they do not feel empowered. They feel like you're dragging them down if you associate them with the Kalinago territory. So we need to get over that. We need to accept what God has blessed us with. Some of us are what we call selective Kalinagos, only when it suits our purpose. We need to be proud at all times of being Kalinago. And we should never use our heritage to gain personal wealth at the expense of the Kalinago community. This selectiveness has to end. So that's my number 1 takeaway. Secondly, protecting of our people from physical, emotional, and other forms of abuse and exploitation. The use of copyright needs to be brought to the fore yesterday as it relates to our knowledge, our dances, our craft, and other skills. I listened tonight to Ms. Green talking about seeing Kalinago people on a brochure, on a magazine, and they're not even aware that they are there. And they get nothing out of it. Meanwhile, the publishers, the publishing companies, the agents, they're riding around in their expensive vehicles. We are still ambulating on our 10 commandments. And it has to stop. So we need to begin exploiting this whole copyright of everything Kalinago. Our physical space, and I still on number 2 takeaway, our physical space needs to be protected and developed. Also to our first consideration, Mr. Moderator, I know that the Kalinago Development Fund was recently initiated. This is a baby step to our financial independence. We need to use that to gravitate to better things for our financial independence. Educating and promoting our culture and heritage amongst our children. And we say that children are like little monkeys. That might not be a good comparison, but children are like little monkeys. Monkey see, monkey do. So children see us behaving one way, and we talking another way. It's like we're talking out of the 2 sides of our mouth, if that is possible. So we talk Kalinago cultural preservation and practices, and we behave contrary to that. What do we expect our children to do? Obviously, we're going to do what they see us doing. So they may have the knowledge in their head, but you see a foreign Kalinago in the Kalinago space who thinks that he or she is a genuine Kalinago because mentally they know what it is to be a Kalinago, but exercising different practices. The Kalinago language needs to be developed further. And I would like to applaud the efforts of Mr. Miranda Langlais, Prosper Paris, and Mrs. Sandford and her daughter. These people really need to be commended for taking the initiative in leading the fight to bring back the Kalinago language. But we have a long ways to go because these efforts are very limited. So, Mr. Moderator, we need to improve on the development and the resurrection, so to speak, of the Kalinago language. And my fourth takeaway is the human connection. And we talk about the racism that exists. And racism is alive and well, even within the Kalinago territory, within our space. And I will tell you that. When I moved from Bataka to settle in Maho River, a former leader said to me, "Well, Miss Cyrille, you know you're the most stupid Kwaib that have." And I was like, you know, and he said, all other Kwaib living Sinek when they go in Dong Road. We refer to Bataka, Salibia area as Dong Road. You're the only Carib I know that live Dong Road and go up road and stay with. And I was like, you know, I thought for true. Because of within our Kalinago space, we still have segregation. Bataka people, I don't want to say that because I live in Maho River, but generally, it's like sometimes you hear people say like, Bataka people think there is Itwi. And then I am always quick to defense, of course, what is it? And then that's why I say Maho River, and then I have nothing else to say. But I am saying that because racism is alive and well within our community, and if we are bringing down each other, who are the quote-unquote neg and negress out there not to bring us down because we are not uplifting each other. So we as a people, we need to celebrate our people. When people do things well, you applaud them. If you see your brother selling bakes, you say, okay, I will make juice. You don't want to make bakes as well. Everybody cannot eat bakes, people are going to choke. So we need to applaud each other's successes. We need to celebrate our people. We don't do that enough. So as a Kalinago people, and I know I bring humor into this discussion, as a Kalinago people, we need to begin recognizing our greats. Because when I'm gone, I want my monument erected. So I'm saying that now so that I will be appreciated even posthumously. But we need to be our brother's keeper. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Willa, for wrapping up this session, this section of the panel here. Very important points here, strengthening the culture and heritage, and accepting the heritage is very important. And the whole idea of being selective Kalinago, I think, is something we look at very carefully for ourselves. And the idea of stopping of the exploitation, be it doing things within the physical space, and it's also important to look at the physical space its financial independence, and this is important. And also, speaking about the education and promoting the heritage, language development is key. And like we have students going out to study politics, history, medicine. It would be a good time in our history to have someone study linguistics, to piece together the remnants of our language into something that we could use over time. And also the human connection, and how do we deal with the racism issues, and how can we break it up, and also to celebrate the great people who have lived in our space. Mahatma Gandhi, one of very popular and very renowned agitator for peace and love and togetherness. He once said, the true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members. I think that's important. So our white William society can be measured as to how they treat us, the Kalinago people, as vulnerable people. And if they treat us bad, then it will tell a story of Dominica being a bad country, etc. So very, very important conversation so far. Ladies, I'm excited. We're wrapping up. We're doing well. We in our time frame here, we're doing pretty well. And we're going to go to the last question. We are hoping to get from you some issues and some ideas and some of your suggestions as to how do we respect how do we portray, sorry, the Kalinago story, the Kalinago history, the Kalinago heritage in all of the medias available to us, or the mediums, be it print, um, apps, games, booklets, etc. And so, Mrs. Frederick, what are the issues and ideas and suggestions that you have that will bring out the truer history of our people? We'll go down the line again like normal. I'm scanning the airwaves for questions. I suspect we will have one or two in a bit. But Mrs. Frederick, you may proceed.
It is said that there are three sides to every story: your side, my side, and the truth. And we believe that it is time that we get the truth of our Kalinago story told to the rest of Dominica and the rest of the world. So we need a complete retelling of Kalinago history. And that has to come from within. We need more of our advocates out there, to start telling a true, unbiased story. It is time you put fingers to keyboards in the academic sense and not just making, blanket statements in social media. We have universities out there who offer native studies. Maybe it's time that we approach our University of the West Indies, to offer a course in Kalinago studies. Or we should ensure that, the universities that offer native studies, that they do incorporate the Kalinago story in that. We need our Kalinago story to be told at every level in the schools here in Dominica, to be taught at every level in the schools here in Dominica. And it is true that we enjoy the Kalinago word of the day in mornings, sometimes more from Mr. Langlais, because, he makes them very exciting. And there was once a friend of mine reached out to me, and she said, Gweneth, I was so excited when I heard that, they're going to have the Kalinago word of the day. And I was like, yes, I'm going to learn to speak Kalinago. And, she was hoping that there would be some structure to it, like subject-verb agreement and, how you conjugate a verb and how you learn other foreign languages. So she was hoping that this is the way that it would go. And, but that's not how it's going. You learn a new word every day, so you piece it together and make your own sentence. But if we take it to the schools, we get the children to learn it. So eventually and gradually, like it is said earlier, monkey say, monkey do, then the children will learn because, between a certain age, the children are more receptive to learning foreign languages. And it has been said also and echoed on the table tonight about the Kalinago territory and being used as a tourism product. And we don't see the offerings from it. Natasha said that we are used on magazines, and I know for a fact that, Dominica cannot be marketed if you don't talk about the Kalinago people and the indigenous people and our craft and our arts and our music and our dances. Yet you find that our craft vendors and our dancers and our, they grow, but they don't grow as fast as the rest of Dominica who enjoys the US dollar. And at the Ministry of Tourism, we have what we call 6 pillars that Dominica tourism focuses on. We have aquatourism, agrotourism, events, entertainments, festivals, adventure, and health and wellness. And it was during this budget this coming year, we're adding a Kalinago pillar to it. Because the Kalinago territory is the definition of community tourism. Within each of the hamlets, you have a natural attraction. You have an experience that you can offer visitors. And not just when you come to the Barana Uti, but you have Tuna Uti, you have Centipede Trail, there's the Lescali Tetchie, and there are other places within Sinico itself, like Basse Aba Pond and the Lovers Pond, and all of these places, that we can bundle together and market as community tourism. And focus is going to be placed on the Kalinago territory this year as a tourism product. So it will not happen overnight. All our sites will not get developed overnight, but it is a step in the right direction, in my opinion. And also, we need to have, I believe we need to have a little bit more pride. We talk about, sometimes we hear people talking about people don't respect us. And it was also said earlier tonight too, but we need to respect ourselves. And we need to celebrate each other. And you know, a new spot has opened. Then you go and you celebrate it. You put up, you know, you put it on your WhatsApp status. You put it on your Facebook. You share the live, as people keep saying. You know, in the social media lingo. We need to look at how we treat each other. We find in the Kalinago space we have persons who hold offices, and we respect them when they are in office. And as soon as they're not there, then they're like any other body on the road tomorrow. You know, we need to change that mindset. How we treat our chiefs, how we treat our principals, how we treat our, you know, other persons within the community, especially our elders. You know, they have the knowledge. We need to be able to sit down with them and appreciate them for who they are, what they have done for us. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Frederick. The true unbiased story is important. And so we need to base the conversation on information, on data, on research. I guess this is a key point here. And the idea for native studies is important because there exists around the world methodologies to study indigenous heritage and culture. So it exists. So it's a good move to get students engaged in that sort of academic conversation. And of course, to have a history and all that heritage taught at all the school levels. And the KT as a unique tourism product, and the Kalinago pillar is important. But the key point here, I think, take-off point is to have some pride, and it's also important to earn respect, because everybody thinks that they should be respected, but you have to earn your respect. I think this is important, and also the respect for the elders is key. Again, I think this is a very, very important point because it leans heavily to what exists within the Kalinago space that we can continue to grow and help, that will help build a climate resilient and a more industrious nation. Natasha, let's see what are the issues and ideas and suggestions that you have as in respects to the portrayal of our heritage.
Okay, one major suggestions that we have talked about over several years is updating and adjusting the to kind of adjust his writing, to correct some of the wrongs that has been written about us. But we really need to take up that mantle and to advocate for the changes ourselves from within the community. We cannot really rely on outsiders to do it for us. We want the perception to change, we want the narrative to change, and we should take up that mantle to do it ourselves. The process was started several years ago with, I think, some of the key authorities in the community, to the extent that probably a 10-pager was developed to start the process of incorporating Kalinago culture into the primary schools. But this has to be continued, and it is up to us, really, as I said, to continue that process. The Ministry of Education will not take it up on themselves unless we push for that change. That is one critical area that we really need to work on. Another thing is a greater recognition for major activities in the community, like the Kalinago Week. We need more brochures, more magazines, more highlights on these activities. This is one of the annual celebrations that we host here in the community. And over the years, we have not received much recognition for it. The Titiwi Festival might receive more recognition for Kalinago Week. So we really need some greater recognition, videography, brochures, magazines to highlight this annual activity which is taking place in the community. Another area we can support the recording and publication of key traditional practices, boat building, cassava bread making. I mean, we want to protect it, to trademark our practices. We don't want anybody to copyright. But really, how is our younger generation going to adopt and learn about somebody who passed away who perfected the art of boat building, and nobody else is continuing that practice? We need to record it, document it, so that we can share it with our younger generation, our upcoming generations. Some time back, we used to have these annual cultural camps where our young people attended camps for several weeks. They learned about the traditions. They practiced it, and some of these were documented. We need to continue this, and we need to be able to document them as we go along. So these are the 3 points that I'd like to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. Thank you so much. The updating of the curriculum is key, so we have to really have a grassroots movement to enact some change and to do our own stories, a key point here, and greater recognition for our activities. So, in essence, we have to big up the PR on things in Kalinago. Case closed. Big it up from all mediums. Invest some monies in it. A record of the heritage or documentation is key, and that documentation will also have to include learning by doing. And so we can do that for our cultural camps and dealing with the elders. I'm excited about this. Mimi, let's roll. Let's see. Let's add your piece here at this time.
Listen to Natasha. I think she have given some broad perspective of the, keeping our Kalinago culture alive. I see the Kalinago Festival, especially the Kalinago Week, should be highlighted, should be a national event, because it is of significant that we highlight those activities, the Kalinago Week and other celebrations. Because the Kalinago Week is a memory. It is it reminds us of the 1940 war that happened during the when the British was being occupied in Dominica. So the so Kalinago Week should be highlighted and should be a national festival. Also, it should bring, to economic activities to our Kalinago people, especially those who are doing basket, the cuisine, the Kalinago cuisine, and other aspects of our Kalinago. Also, in the education system, of course, it is very important that we have our document, all our legend stories be documented, and of course the children in the school, that they know that they can able to tell stories. We have written a lot of Aladdin, like books of Aladdin and other other foreign stories. But if we are able to bring our do our legend stories into comic books, and of course right now you have technology at our fingertips, we can greatly enhance our our legend stories. Of course, our traditional dances and song, that too is very important. We have to document our traditional dances, our songs, our music for future generation. And of course, I see a museum, of course, which is very important, that we could have our cultural aspect, our artifacts, so that we can able to show and teach our children the importance of our culture. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, our Kalinago Queen. The point of the Kalinago being a national event is definitely an important point here, because it definitely will link, like you rightly said, to economic activity within our space. The second important point here, documentation and telling of the stories. In the very same way, there was a shift in the Caribbean from moving from the white stories of Goldilocks and stuff to Anansi stories. which are African-based stories. They're very similar. We can do our traditional stories, and talking about our traditional plants and animals, etc. This is a very key point here, and also to tie in the song and music and dance. So rather than singing about blinging and stuff, we can talk about Kalinago chokers and stuff. Instead of talking about drinking the Hennessy and we can talk about drinking the Wiku. So put the aspects of the heritage in this song and dance. I'm excited, Miranda. I'm excited for this. And the museum piece is important because we have evidence that survived today that we actually existed on this land. And this evidence is in the archaeological finds. And so we have to put them in a place that remains secure, so that we will be continually reminded of that glorious past. So the museum piece is good. Annette, let's add some piece to this here, the issues and the suggestions and some of the ideas you have moving forward.
I do not know too much details about the book, the coloring book that is being currently the people are working on, but what I would suggest, some of the suggestions would be to help dispel some of the myths about the Kalinago peoples. Oftentimes when we are portrayed in the media, we are often portrayed as people who are very poor, in deep poverty. And it's just amazing. There was a tourist passing once, and I'm in my garden by my car, and he would stop and say, "Where's the Kalinago village?" Because you don't expect Kalinago people to be maybe driving a vehicle or, having these kinds of luxuries in this age. And that is not true. We do have Kalinago people who have done very well and who are still trying to develop their communities and help the other Kalinago youths and young people. Secondly, that Kalinago are drunks. We often hear that a lot, that Kalinago people are alcoholics. That is not true. Not every Kalinago is an alcoholic. So there are young people who are non-alcoholics. They just refuse alcoholics. I don't think any of us are alcoholics here at the table. So these are some of the things that people say about us that is not true and that is often portrayed on media. Of course, I think I heard the other panelists mention about cannibalism and all of that. So we need to dispel those myths in these books, or these coloring books. Also, to highlight our heroes. And sometimes when you think of heroes, we think of all the people in the past who perhaps stood up and the chiefs who stood up in the battle. But we have heroes here who have done very well. People like Miranda Langlais, who is still fighting very hard to keep the culture alive. We have our minister, we have, Kalinago chiefs, and like Mr. Cozier Frederick, who helped develop this place. These are the heroes that we need to appreciate, and they are current in the minds of our young people, so they can better relate to them. So that would be one of the suggestions I have, to have as many of our current heroes portrayed in these books as well. Then our women often are portrayed as weak and as very soft, easy to please. Some people tend to say, they're like clothes pegs, you squeeze the head and the legs open. These are things that people say, and that is not true. We do have very respectable women who are very committed in their marriages and who take care of the children. So these are some of the myths that we have to dispel about indigenous women. And as you can see here, we have a good panel of women, and we have young people like Adicia and many other young women in the Kalinago territory who are very respectful and they are doing well. So this I would really like you all to work on. And of course, the documentation they spoke about, it's very, very, very important. Oftentimes, we have a lot of people come to the Kalinago territory, do research, and they leave. And we do not get the results of this research. We don't know what happened to them. Even currently, we have the Smithsonian Museum. I do not know if the Kalinago territory benefit from the Smithsonian Museum. Maybe not. But if you go to that museum, you will see a lot of our videos, a lot of our stories or books or pictures, and then we don't really get anything from it. So again, we speak on intellectual property rights. How is it that we as a community can gain from these documentations and these publications that are put out? So that would be one of my issues. How is it that the Kalinago community, how is it that we're going to benefit from the publications? And, pass this knowledge on to the younger people. So that's my contribution. And
thank you very much, Senator Sandford. Key points. We need to seriously and once and for all dispel all those myths and stereotypes. All of it in its entirety. I agree 100%. The second important point, we need to highlight our heroes, and not only looking, rightly said, to the past, the glorious past, but the heroes who live among us. It's important to celebrate them, important. And a key point here, and I really like this one here, to portray women as very strong and powerful individuals within our societies, even today. And the key point of not over-researching the community and have that research sit in a text on a shelf that doesn't affect us positively, but to document it for ourselves. And how do we get some revenue and assistance through our intellectual copyrights? Good stuff, good stuff. Willa, you have the end here, and you have to sort of get the kind of what you call a quas. Yeah, the Kole boot. So okay. let's see what you have to offer, Willa. Thank you so much.
Okay, as it relates to how I would like to see the portrayal and dissemination of Kalinago history and heritage in print, and especially the booklets under consideration. I know that education is key. Anything that you want to get going, there must be an education aspect to it. More knowledge, more power. But how do we do that? We need the active involvement of our elders, because they are the keepers of the knowledge. We need to involve them. So when we are doing this book, be it a comic, what was the other book we're doing? A comic book and a coloring book. We need to keep in mind that the knowledge of the elders has to come through. There has to be a message in the coloring. Children, we don't just want children coloring for coloring's sake, to keep between the lines. But when they are through, their picture, that they painted should tell a picture, a story. If that is not part of the book, then we need to revisit that, because we do not know what it looks like. But whoever is doing it needs to get that. And they need to get the knowledge of the elders involved. I would like to see oral and visual documentation of our culture to include an archive, a physical space within our sacred space for those documentation. And that space can be marketed. We have tourists come, they pay a fee to visit the archives, and people might be saying everything Willa says is an economic thing, but no money, no love, no resilience. There's no two ways about it. So we have to see the economics in it. Yes, we are doing something that is culturally motivated. We are preserving our culture, but at the same time, we are getting a livelihood out of it. We need a more visible and audible presence in the media through Kalinago-oriented programs. So we need to see those little video clips between the news on GIS, on the digital news. We need to have those little videos running that highlights the Kalinago territory. Prime advertisement on DBS. MO News needs to on and off put in a little clipping about the Kalinago territory. We see all this wonderful footage from all the people running the drones. Get together. Let us harness all these people. Let them come together and remember these people, the rest of Dominica. They owe us, the Kalinago people, something. We are not saying that we have a dependency, but as the rightful keepers of this country, we fought, we defended our shores, we kept this country resilient. These quote-unquote, Miranda, I don't want to pick on you tonight, but sometimes the neg and the negress out there, they have to come together, and give something back to the Kwaib. So maybe we need to get people like who are the persons running these programs? These 360 people, AMO, Chad Ambo, who else is out there putting all this wonderful footage on social media? We need to come together and market the Kalinago territory. You need to go and visit Boat. You need to go and visit Lescaleteche. You need to go to the memorial site. You need to go to Bassin Diab. You need to go to all these places and put together a comprehensive video that highlights the positive and the beautiful things of the Kalinago territory and get the storytelling aspect into it. Sit with the elders and hear their story. Sit with a basket maker and understand the story that goes into a basket. Because sometimes we buy a craft product and we say, oh, I'm just going to buy a Ponye Kwaib. It is not just a Ponye Kwaib, you know. Because there is a story. That basket has a life of its own. And every craft item that you purchase from the Kalinago territory has a history. From the time the llama was planted, when it was harvested, the cleaning, the effort. This mother is sitting here breastfeeding her baby at the same time cleaning a llama, weaving a basket, and the love and the pride that goes into the product adds value to the product. So you need to sit with these people and understand how our craft, how our storytelling, our folklore is important, how it identifies us as a people. So we need to get these people to come on board and give us a presence in the media, visual and audio. The development of our own radio station, which is under discussion and planning, will be a big boost for disseminating information about the Kalinago territory and our heritage and culture. And who knows? Pretty soon we may have our own internet television or something. So that is the way I think we should go. And a national Kalinago Day. We definitely need our own holiday. Sometimes in local palace we say that we have a society that like to see woe. And maybe yes, it is see woe. But it is a day when we can just say thank God for everything that we are, that we have. Thank the Great Spirit for guiding us through the years, for preserving our culture, our everything. So we need a national holiday when the rest of Dominica can come here and appreciate our culture, our cuisine, and just leave their money in the Kalinago territory and say, just have all what's in my wallet, you know, that sort of thing. So that it can empower our people. And we no longer will be on the indigent list. So people can now begin doing for themselves. So a National Kalinago Day is definitely needed. And I'm happy that the chief is here. I hope you are taking note. So I just want to wrap up by saying that dances, traditions, legends, and beliefs have been kept alive by our elders who pass on these traditions through storytelling. So the language, again, is important. We cannot underemphasize that. Our skills in boat making and all the other ladies have said, we need to keep those traditions alive. We need to get workshops going. We need to start nurturing the trees that UNDP are planting so that in the next 15, 20 years, we can have some serious boafuye to go out and fish and sustain our livelihood. So, thank you so much for having me. And
thank you so much, Willa. Briefly, she thinks that we have to have a lot of elders' involvement, and that's key. And a physical archive is important. It is very, very important. It's something that we don't take very seriously in islands in the Caribbean, but we have to do this for sure. And the sort of mini documentaries, visible and very audible news, etc., challenging all of the multimedia houses to join in that movement is important. And the storytelling is key. And she speak about the radio station, and my mind thinking of some of the positive propaganda we can push out there in the radio, on the airwaves. And also to look at the National Kalinago Day, where we'll have a big wiku, which is having a wonderful drink and a wonderful experience. And I want to just tee off one of Willa's quote as she ended, "No money, no love." And so it's important to have that conversation about the history and heritage and culture, to honor it, to celebrate it, to speak about it to the future. But one of the other panels we'll be doing, I want to lead in the coming months, is also how do we make money in that Kalinago space? And so this has ended this evening on the culture and heritage, but I'm going to challenge a few of us out there who have ideas and to create a Kalinago economic model of how is it that we're going to make money to survive. Because she's right, no money, no love. And so we have to be able to look at the trade with the French countries, how do we plan our agriculture, and basically how we develop wealth in the Kalinago space. So I'm a historian by training. I appreciate the history and the culture, but also I'm also concerned about how do we marry culture with making economic strides and to develop a community that does not remain dependent on government systems, on NGOs, on international organizations. And at this point, I want to thank the UNDP, also the India UN Development Partnership Fund, and the UN Office for South-South Cooperation, and the government of Dominica for that initiative here. I really, really want to thank these wonderful ladies. I want to take a picture of them, so they hang around. I want a picture of these wonderful ladies. Yeah, I want a photo. I saw they didn't want this afternoon, but I wanted to do one of them. And as I say, I'm really excited, Washla, that these ladies could really add some value to the conversation. I don't want to judge, this is not a show, but I think they handle themselves pretty well. And just for the viewing and listening public, you can well appreciate when you see a Kalinago woman that she's much more than her nice looks and her real hair. She's much more than that. She is an intellectual, she's strong, she's powerful, and she has a lot to contribute to our white Kubulian society. Mio Belbagay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Washla, you want to say a few words? Because this is our last event this evening on the webinars. And definitely, I just want to say again, we're going to the economic part, because we need to make more in Kalinago territory.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Just to say that the webinars were quite enriching, all 4 webinars. Obviously, you would have more or less the overlapping of views, because I mean the issues are critical and they are well felt and recognized by the stakeholders within the Kalinago space. So very, very important in that regard. And a lot of this information will be culled by us, and some of it will inform the booklets under consideration and also other planned or, let's say, projects, be it videos, books, apps, and so on, that the Kalinago people themselves will come up with in the future. So that the information gathered from the webinar is not only targeted at the specific booklets under immediate consideration, but looking towards the future in the Kalinago space, that will help to inform the development of various products, let us put it that way, whether in multimedia, in print, for TV, and all the things that were mentioned here this evening and for all the other webinars. So it's a pleasure to have participated and to observe and to record a lot of the information, and of course we will share that with the various stakeholders as well for the record and for reference purposes. Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you so much, and our listening public, DBS Radio, Imo News, DJ Cell, who supports us also. And I just want to leave you with a quote from a philosopher, an American philosopher, John Dewey. We live in a democratic society. We think that we can all speak freely, but he said at one point that we naturally associate democracy with freedom of action, but freedom of action without free capacity of thought behind it is only chaos. So what we're doing tonight is taking all those bits and pieces and putting together into a nice story. So we have a positive action moving forward in terms of the new narrative for Kalinago in our land, Waiti Kubuli. Thank you.
Okay, and we have come to the end of the SSLR project discussions. It started last week, Thursday and Friday, and it continued this week, Thursday and Friday. Tonight was night 4, and the final night of this SLR project, where we highlighted the women. And this tonight we had 5 powerful women giving their testimonies and making their contribution to the entire SSLR project discussion, which will, the information that has been received here this evening will be taken into account and compiled into one report that will be presented for future action in the hopes of impacting and improving the lives of the Kalinago people. And these women who were on the panel this evening, would like to take the opportunity to highlight them again. They were Miss Willa Cyrille, who is a teacher by profession; Anette Sandford, who is a senator in the House of Assembly; Gweneth Frederick, who is the manager of the Kalinago Barana Ute; Natasha Green, who is the project manager in the Ministry of Tourism; and Miranda Langlais, who they refer to as the Kalinago Queen. So even if within the Kalinago space we have Kalinago people who have made a significant stride in education, in economics, and are making a meaningful contribution to the overall development of Dominica. And this tonight's SSLR project also forms part of a regular program which is on DBS Radio, which is called Indigenous Voices, which is aired every Friday from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. on the nation station DBS, sponsored by Digicel, to better together. And I would also like to take the opportunity at this point to have a few closing words with the minister responsible in environment and Kalinago upliftment, the Honorable Cozier Frederick. And good evening, Minister, Honorable Minister. And how are you? How are you today?
I'm excited this evening. I was on the stage with this wonderful Kalinago women.
Yes.
I mean, there cannot be anything better than that on a Friday evening.
Right.
You know, in the Kalinago space, wonderful Kalinago women. The conversation was exceptional. I feel so honored, you know, to be a parliamentary representative and serving those wonderful people.
Yes.
And even having a parliamentary colleague here.
Right.
Because you see, in the Kalinago space, when it comes to Kalinago issues, we are one on this thing. We're not fighting about these things.
Right.
We may share different views politically, but
right.
for the movement for Kalinago development, we are ensuring that we play our part and show really true leadership.
Right.
I'm so excited, and for your support and for the listenership who appreciate what we're doing.
Yes.
I'm so excited. There's so much we can do in that space.
Right. And I want to get a little more in-depth perspective from you as it relates to how important was it for you as the minister responsible for Kalinago upliftment, and then how important was it for you as you being a Kalinago person yourself to have this sort of seminar here?
For me, it was an enlightening experience. These are things that I wish for as a kid, as a young man growing up, wishing to be in the circle of people who understand and appreciate our culture. And as the Minister of Environment and Kalinago Upliftment and Rural Modernization, it's exciting for me because all of the things they're saying is they're saying from their heart, you know. And so if we put this into practice, I think we will honor our ancestors, we'll honor the folks who have spent the time off on a Friday evening to participate, and we can add some value to the civilization that comes. And what I think it adds also for me as a minister.
The 4 sessions which started last Thursday, Friday, last night, and again tonight, we have had a variety of people on your panel, ranging from the youth, the elders, and tonight the women. What were your impressions when you were sitting back and listening to them presenting and giving their views?
You know something, it's one thing to talk and lecture, like, because I'm a historian by training, but it's another thing to listen to people say the things that you're passionate about, and to realize that we're not in this alone and they have the capacity. So I feel very fortunate as a leader in the Kalinago space that I have people around who can give support, who have knowledge to share. I mean, the youth piece was exciting. A new voice, and they talk about how they see the future, and because they're part of it, And the elders group was another wonderful experience. The past chief and the elders and the shaman was there.
Right.
The piece with the historians and the academics was exciting too, because it started the ball rolling.
Yes.
The kind of building narrative. And what we saw, we had the same questions, but then they were kind of went so deep into it that you may have for that there were 10 different questions that were answered.
Right.
And so it was really exciting to just have that evolve before our very eyes, and to make sure that the Kalinago essence remains part of a significant part of the Dominican or the white Cuban society.
Yes.
And I mean, if we discount that, brother, we're going to go down a wrong road, a very old path.
Yeah.
And so I just want to be mindful of that. And I remind for myself that I have to honor those conversations, because people did genuinely participate. And it's exciting. So it's a bigger responsibility for me now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a heavy burden to carry, because they're going to keep me in check.
Yeah.
Because they sat there, they pour their heart out, and I have to follow through.
Right.
I have to come through.
Right. And in terms of the SSLR project in its entirety, how did the collaboration between the UNDP and the contributors from India and your ministry come about?
The thing is that we have in the Kalinago space spoken about the fact that we need to develop agriculture. We have to make sure that the capacity of the council is empowered. We need to rebrand, and then we wrote the project and we threw it out there to the national community, and the UNDP say we can take this on, we can partner with you, and we don't have the funding, but we can get a partner.
Right.
And then the Indian government comes in and say we could partner with you.
Right.
And then the UNDP was so happy to engage a consultant to do that work. And then what's most interesting about this, all of the young folks who participate are from the Kalinago territory.
Yes.
So the leadership at the consular level is not from the Kalinago space, but she's been able to engage folks, and so you can see that not only is government a partner in this, but we have international partners who want to come on board.
Right.
And so once we do the projects in the right way, we craft the narrative properly.
Yes.
It is something that impacts the community in a positive way. Then there's no limit to the funding that we can bring to the fore.
Yeah.
And so the dependency on central government alone to support, it's easy off the burden from central government.
Right.
Because their partners around the world were eager and excited to work with us, knowing that we are able to build a project together, and we are taking ownership of it. And that's the important point. There's sometimes in the history of developing countries that there's a top-down approach where people say, this is what you should do, this is what I think you want. But we have in our case, we're writing the narrative, brother.
Yeah.
We're saying this is what we want. We can participate. We have the capacity.
Yes.
And so I was really excited that the government could give us the money to do it, and the source of cooperation of the UN and the UNDP can sort of help us do it, because at a governance level and at a project level, we do have limitations at this point. We're building it, but we have limitations. So we need partners like the UNDP to give us that support.
Right.
Yeah.
And in the execution of that project, how do you see it impacting the Kalinago space?
It is going to impact not only the physical sort of transformation, but the human capacity. And that project is it is so profound. It moves beyond just what we see as built heritage and built infrastructure.
Right.
Because the thing about building a resilient community, we have to be able to build the capacity of people.
Yes.
And so as the stronger and the more powerful and the more assertive people can be, they will honor and respect what is built.
Right.
And so we are sort of reversing the model, because in developing countries we realize that people put wonderful big massive structures, and so very visible projects, but the people are not interested because they were not part of it.
Right.
And so this is what we're bringing to the fore. And I don't think I want to say that we have the model of what should be done in development processes across the country, across the Caribbean, across the world.
Right.
And it is deeply rooted in traditions where everyone in the community is seen as an equal partner, and they can participate in their own development.
Right. And in relation to the books, the coloring books and the comic books that are part of the project, is there a time frame in which these books will be distributed to the schools?
So what we want to do is that we have another year to wrap this up.
Okay.
So when we do this consultation, we want to make sure that we cover all angles, all perspectives, and to really capture what should be a true telling across all sectors.
Yeah.
And so when the narrative comes up, people really appreciate that. This is the story we wanted to tell.
Right.
It has covered what the youth has said, the elders, the women, and so we're trying to leave no stone unturned. in terms of how we do tell truth
Yes.
and rewrite, because we are the masters of our destiny. For too long we lament the fact that the conquerors write your story,
Yes.
and so we have a chance now to unearth the stories for ourselves, tell it as it is, give an unbiased telling of it, and dispel a lot of the myths and stereotypes that have existed over the years,
Right.
and to really cement our existence as a resilient people who have survived some of the harshest and things that the so-called civilized world could throw at us. and so the retail is important, and I'm excited because we are moving away from the snow and all of those narratives, and snowmen and talking about deers and bears, and we can now talk about our good, maniku and our local traditional herbs. So we really adding some value to it, because I will tell you that if we discount the importance of indigenous heritage, we are taking a big part of the human biodiversity out.
Right.
And so although we are a minority group, we have been vulnerable for a long time. If we extract it from humanity, we may well cause some imbalance in the world.
Right.
It's something that we have to keep, because we live a life that is in tune with nature.
Yes.
It's something that people are now looking for around the world, trying to escape from the boxes and with air conditioned units and to connect with nature. We have that, and we have that for free.
Right.
And so just being a kind of a person, living in the Kalinago space, doing what we do, things that were thought to be barbaric and uncivilized are what we see will heal the world and heal ourselves.
Right.
And so when you look around the Kalinago space, you see smiling faces, because people are really happy to enjoy the fresh air and to be able to eat from their backyards and able to sell produce and so it's just really exciting times. And I made a point tonight about bringing the economic discussion. This is key.
Yes.
I love history, I love traditions, but how are we going to use it to make some serious money?
For sure.
And how we can make some serious money without affecting nature and not throwing our culture.
Right.
So it's important for us, and I'm excited. As a minister, I mean 2022 is just a wonderful year without that project, and to ensure that Dominican population, people around the world, realize that we are an integral part of the human family, and we have much to offer to development of our space.
Right. Yeah. All right. So, well, thank you very much, Honorable Minister.
And thank you for the late hours you've been here. We appreciate at DBS Radio. We say thank you to your manager, Cecil Joseph, who and all of you guys who on. I mean, just look at your faces while the ladies are speaking, that you guys really understand. And I feel now that I have sort of brothers with you guys, colleagues and allies.
For sure.
Allies who can spread that word, spread that news that we do have a unique story to tell.
Indeed.
And then the media houses like DBS Radio, you can do that. I really want to. I mean, it's so heartwarming to know that a national station can look at a minority group and highlight them in such a powerful way.
Indeed, yes.
And you guys, the team here, I mean, especially, it's like really immersing in the culture. I'm so excited, brother.
For sure.
And we have much to do. We have much to do in that space.
Definitely. And I will definitely lament and share the sentiment that DBS will be there now, tomorrow, the future, and beyond, to ensure that the heritage, the culture of the Kalinago people lives on.
Yes.
That's what we are here to do. We have a bigger mandate, we have a bigger vision, and that is to ensure that everything Dominican remains Dominican and it is known to the world. So DBS will definitely be with you beyond the seminar and continue to partner with you and the people in the Kalinago space.
I really do appreciate that. And all listeners who are there, I'm still on the airways, so in your cars, wherever you are, their homes. And Friday night, I mean, you spend an hour with us, 2 hours, 2.5 hours. I mean, I salute you for that.
Yes.
This is time well spent, and I there's nothing more I could say to thank you, really, because I really appreciate the support.
All right.
In this sort of cyberspace.
Yes, indeed. and we appreciate you, and thank you again, and we will always be there with you.
Respect.
Right?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ayahora.
Yes, and there you have it, folks, listening and viewing as we come to the end of this broadcast for the SSLR Project Night 4, where we highlighted the women. So on behalf of our technical team, my name is James Rodney, and we'll now take you back to DBS Master Control as we conclude with this evening's proceedings and give you some entertaining Friday night music. So we'll take you back now to Master Control. To those of you viewing, good night.